Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast, where we focus on how authors found success, looking at strategies that have taken them to the top of the bestseller charts, as well as what they've learned from their mistakes. Because being an indie author is more than knowing the latest marketing trend. It's about being innovative and creative and learning from your mistakes. Your co-hosts, Jamie Albright and Sara Rosette, couldn't be more different. In fact, they're a study in contrasts. However, despite all of their differences, they agree that sharing what they wish they'd known, both the good and the bad, is the key to moving forward. Let's get to the show.
Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. I'm Sara Rosette.
And I'm Jamie Albright.
And this week we have Ryan Zee, an interview with him about Booksweeps and Plottr.
Oh, yeah. He's awesome. Love him a lot. He's got such good information. And he was really a great interview for us.
Yeah, and I think that it'll be interesting because we talked to him about how you can use Booksweeps to grow your mailing list and Plottr for like planning a book. Mm-hmm. And I haven't tried it yet. I think you have it though, right?
I have it. I haven't tried it yet either. So.
Yeah, but it sounds really interesting, and it sounds like it could be really helpful, especially if you like I like a little information before I start writing, and then I kind of like to write a little bit. But if you like to have everything sketched out beforehand, I think it sounds like a really good tool. So.
Right, and I think you can do both. I think it's a versatile tool. But everyone that I've seen, because there's a Facebook group, everyone is loving it. So yeah. I'm excited about it. So yeah. So what's been going on with you this week?
Let's see. This week I have been working on my revisions for the Christmas book. So I've been working on that. So I love revisions. So happy. So I'm doing that. And then I also, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the podcast I listened to about Kobo writing life and audiobooks. And so I've been uploading my audiobooks to Kobo so that they will be direct on Kobo. So I'm about to get that done. Yeah, it's taken me a while. It's a little more, just takes a while to get all the files uploaded and everything switched around. So I'm doing that. And then, let's see, there were two things that I was going to mention. One is that I'm currently in the middle of listening to the Creative Penn Podcast with Lindsay Buroker. And it's all about writing a series and character. And, so I just love that kind of stuff. So I think it's a really good episode, and it's got a lot of good tips about, how to create a series and stuff. So love that. And then the other thing I found is I found this app that I've been using. It's a pomodoro timer. It's called,
I've used it, yeah.
Yeah, it's called Flat Tomato. And and you can set it, it keeps the time for you. And so, you don't even have to turn it on or off. You just start it going, and then it tells you, hey, it's time for a break, and you can set it longer or shorter. Like if you like a longer pomodoro, you can do that.
Right.
And I don't know, it's been really cool because when I get done, I can just look at that and go, oh, I did, 3 pomodoros, so therefore I know I did this many hours or whatever. Because I like to know like how long it actually took me to revise those chapters.
Right.
So,
oh yeah, that's a really great.
Yeah.
That's a good thing to think about. I don't think that way. I just dig in and go, oh Lord, is this ever going to end? Yeah.
But it's really pretty too, and it's got all these features where like you can change the color of the different timer, and you can do different stuff. It's lots of fun.
So you'll put the link in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll put that in there. So, and I'll put the link to the podcast about the series with Jonah Penn and Lindsay Buroker, and then I'll put the link to my series book too, because if anyone's interested in that, there's a lot of ideas about marketing and different ways to write a series.
That's awesome.
That's me. What have you been doing?
Not a lot.
You've been busy in other things.
I was supposed to start my book this week, and I have started some of the stuff, but as far as sitting down and writing, I'm looking at Plottr, and I'm going to put stuff in, but my daughter and her family are moving, and she has several children and 3 under the age of 2. And so I had to come and help her. I mean, I didn't have to, I wanted to, but so I did a little bit this morning, and I'll do a little bit this evening after they go to bed. But really, it's life. And I do this job, one, so I can do the things I want to in my life. And if I had a regular 9-to-5 job, well, now that we're in COVID, I might be able to, but I probably wouldn't be able to.
It'd be hard still, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be very hard. So I'm fortunate and I'm very grateful. The new book is still doing really well. I think I'm hanging out around 500 in the store, and I've been there for, I don't know, several days. So that's really cool. And also, we've just gotten such positive feedback from our launch episode. And we have a Facebook group, Wish I'd Known Them for Writers. It's on Facebook. There are a couple of questions you have to answer, Sara and I from Houston, just FYI. And but I've really enjoyed just the few people that are in there. We've asked some questions. They've had some really good answers, but also the feedback from the episode has been really good. So if you have any ideas of things you'd like for us to talk about, put them in the group, and we'll either discuss them in the group or we'll do a podcast about it. And if we don't know about it, we'll find somebody who does. So that's kind of what we do.
Here's your opportunity to, ask questions and request guests, and so we'll try and, see what we can do to get people on the podcast that you're interested in hearing from.
If you have ideas about guests, we're all ears because, we have some really great people already lined up that we've already interviewed, but we're always looking for really good guests. So anyway, let's get on with the show because Ryan's got a lot of great things to say.
All right. Sounds good.
So today we're really happy to have Ryan Zee with us today. So let me read a short bio and tell you a little bit about him in case you don't know. After graduating from Writers House Literary Agency as their first digital intern, Ryan Zee started his own book marketing agency in January 2015, which led him to develop Booksweeps.com, now one of the largest book giveaway and lead generation sites for fiction authors, with an email list of approximately 100,000 readers. Over 4,000 authors have used Booksweep services, including top-selling names in romance, mystery and thriller, sci-fi and fantasy, Christian fiction, and YA. And I'm one of those. I've used Booksweeps, and we are also going to talk about Plottr as well today. So we're really happy to have you. Hi, Ryan.
Hey, Sara. Great to be here. Thanks so much.
Oh, we're great. We're so glad to have you. So tell us how you got started working with writers, Ryan.
Oh, Lord. So it's a long, it's kind of a long, funny story. So, when I was in college, I didn't actually realize that you could work with authors. I thought that's just what is that, like a dream, weird fantasy situation. It's like, is this even a real thing? So kind of after I graduated, I started doing these internships with literary agencies and publishers in Manhattan. And sort of one thing led to another, and I ultimately got this job working with this pretty famous New York Times bestselling nonfiction author, working out of her apartment, looking at over Central Park, which is kind of insane.
Wow.
Sounds like a movie.
Yeah, it was. Unfortunately, it turned into a little bit. That's kind of close, a little bit too close, because it sort of turned into a Delaware's Prada situation.
Oh God.
Yeah. But so that was kind of a fun, moment where I kind of learned that writers are just sort of people, and working with writers is awesome, but you also just have to take that into account. So that was sort of how I got started, working with writers generally. And then from there, I started, as you said, as you mentioned, I started my own agency, my own marketing agency after I started getting some referrals. When I was working at Writers House, ultimately they started referring me people after that internship ended. So one thing sort of led to another, and kind of things took off from there.
Were you mostly working with traditional authors or indie published authors?
Yeah, so it's a good question. Yeah, so at the beginning, I was mostly working with I was working with traditionally published authors, and then some of those authors ended up being hybrid authors. Most of them were romance authors at the beginning. So from there, kind of helped me transition into the indie space because they had friends who were either also hybrid or just indie. And so it kind of became this nice mix.
Well, it sounds like you know the industry sort of inside and out because you've got the traditional background with all of that, and now you're in the indie space as well. So tell us a little bit about Well, first, I should ask, do you have any aspirations to write a book
Yeah.
yourself? You do?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I don't know what kind of book. I don't know what kind of book. Yeah, exactly. I'm not even sure if I'd like, I mean, I'm thinking maybe nonfiction, but I'd love to write some fiction at some point. I feel like I don't know if you two either ever feel this way, but sometimes when I used to write fiction, you know, in college and around then, like I got into this headspace where I felt, you know, I didn't necessarily want to be. It's sort of emotionally taxing at times to write that way. So, you know, so it was something that I wasn't quite ready for, I think, and so it's something that as I, you know, moving forward, I'm excited to try again in the future. But
Yeah, well, you know, I was 50 when I started, so it's, you know, you've got plenty of time. Plenty of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is very emotionally draining, I feel like, to write. Like sometimes I'll finish my words for the day and I'm just like physically exhausted, and all I've been doing is sitting at a keyboard thinking, and you know, it can just wear you out.
Yeah, it can.
Well, it's like people often say, like, if you don't feel the emotions of the characters you're writing, you're not really writing very well. And so, you know, I don't always want to feel those emotions, you know.
The worst part is when I'm writing in Starbucks and I, like, if my characters are having an argument, like my facial, like I'm having the facial expressions of the people have it, and then I look around and I realize people are watching me because, you know, I'm just like shaking my head and
you're
my
scaring
mouth is
them.
probably moving. Yeah, exactly. It's so embarrassing. Yeah, I probably should stay home during those times. So tell us about Booksweeps and what you do for authors.
Yeah, so Booksweeps was a sort of started as a side project back in 2015, 2016. We were, you know, I was working with some romance authors trying to figure out ways to help them leverage their audience into, you know, more readers and more fans. So we came up with this idea of, you know, helping them by bringing together multiple authors into a promotional giveaway. So that you would have multiple authors in the same genre promoting, you know, basically promoting a contest page where readers could sign up and, you know, learn more about them, sign up for the newsletter and whatnot. So that idea kind of exploded back in 2016. One thing led to another, and I ended up creating a full website, which became Booksweeps. And so over the last few years, we've been running those sorts of giveaways on a regular basis. So essentially, we help authors grow their email lists and their BookBub followings primarily now. So we'll bring together a group of authors in a specific genre, like small town romance or urban fantasy or mystery, you know, cozy mystery, etc. And each author would give away a couple copies of their book. And, you know, we provide promotional materials for them. So we provide graphics, social media templates, along with other materials that, you know, they can make it easy for them to help promote the giveaways, and we also promote them all through our email list. So that way, you know, these readers are coming to these giveaway pages, and then they're signing up to hear more, you know, to learn more about the authors and signing up for their email lists.
So yeah, it's just a good way to find new readers. I think I've done a couple of them, and I think you're right that like about 2014, 2015, that became a very popular way to grow your newsletter list. And, you know, would you say that it's still kind of on the upsweep, or is it kind of tapering off? Are people as interested in that as they were at the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, I think, so it's sort of a multi-tiered question in the sense that, you know, there are folks who, you know, have been with us since the beginning, and they still promote with us on a regular basis. And then there are some folks, I think, who they don't want to participate, not necessarily because they aren't getting results, but because they aren't, they just want something else to do with their readers, essentially. And then we have
just for variety then.
Yeah, so for variety's sake, they want to change it up. Yeah. But we still, you know, a lot of our promotions end up filled out. And then we have a lot of folks who are just sort of discovering us now. So even if, you know, we've been doing this for 4 years, they, you know, they're just starting out maybe. So it's, you know, the cycle always sort of restarts with wherever the author is in their, you know, their own process.
Right. So you're also involved with Plottr. So tell us what it is and how it can help authors.
Yeah, so Plottr is a visual outlining software for writers. It was just named one of the top 4 outlining softwares by Kindlepreneur, which was really exciting. So essentially, it's a tool that helps you as an author, plot out and outline your books visually. Kind of like it takes the index card corkboard method and kind of turns it into a program that you can then use to do that without having to worry about your dogs eating your workbooks or your note cards or what have you.
Right.
So it's sort of hard. It's a little bit hard to explain without seeing it. But essentially, it's a tool that lets you plot out your stories visually, kind of on these different timelines, different plot lines, and so you can connect. You can use it as a series Bible. You can use it to track notes about your story. You can correct it. So collect your characters and places, and track details about them, so that when you're then writing your book later, you have all this information in one central location, along with the narrative structure itself. It just makes it a lot easier for people to, understand what's happening in their story and then write it more quickly.
And how did you come? I mean, like email list building to Plottr. I mean, that's a bit of a leap. How did you get there?
Yeah, so it wasn't. So I didn't build Plottr myself. I came to it a little bit later as a co-founder. So the program itself was invented by my partner, whose name is Cameron Sutter. So he's a YA author himself, and he built it to basically help him plot out his own stories. He's a software engineer by trade, and he was having trouble with that process. So he built it as a tool to use himself. So when I discovered this. I think this goes back actually to the question, do you want to write at some point? And I was like, yes, I do. And this is be an amazing tool to help me do that. So I think that was sort of where the link in my mind was this is an awesome product. I'd love to be involved with it. And also I'd love to use this myself.
Right. Yeah. Well, sometimes the best things come out of need. A lot of the stuff that we now have as indie authors, it's because somebody was writing and they were like, oh, I need this, so I'll make it, or I'll hire somebody else to work on it. So that's great.
Yeah,
that's great. Well, and it is part of your brand too. I mean, you're about helping authors, and this is certainly a tool that would help authors. So, what are some of the common mistakes you see authors making?
Yeah,
present company excluded.
Right. You two don't make any mistakes ever. So.
Yeah. No, you're wrong there, because that's where this podcast came from. I'm just going to say, because you work with so many different authors and you see so many different genres, we thought you might have an interesting perspective on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess it's specifically relating to email marketing is where I see a lot of, is what I see most of. So I think one thing that I find really interesting that, so overall, I would say folks now do a lot better job of with their marketing, especially indie authors, than they were doing maybe a few years ago. But one thing I still notice a lot, specifically with emailing, is the tendency to not focus specifically on one call to action, meaning one behavior or one thing that you want readers to do. So a lot of times authors will put together these really long emails that have multiple sections with all different, they have a Q&A and an event section and read this and check out that. And also here's a newsletter swap, and so, from a marketing perspective, typically you want to focus on just that one main thing, because otherwise people get distracted. It's sort of like if you tell your kids to imagine, I have 4 different chores for you to do, now go. Right, what are they going to do? Right, they might not do any of them, or but it's "Mommy, I'm overwhelmed." It's and so I think there's a similar kind of thing happening in psychology at work when you email readers with 8 different things. They're well, I'm not really sure where to start. What's the one thing you want me to focus on?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of that, because
I was going to say, I thought we weren't going to talk about us.
Yeah, because I think when you email maybe once a month, there's a tendency to catch everybody up on what's going on. Or sometimes I'll start out and I'll think, oh, I don't have anything to say. And then as I get going, I'm like, oh yeah, I need to tell them about this and this. And at the end, you're right, I have 4 links there. And I always think that's not good. So yes, that's a good point.
I mean, so I think some people will hear this and then think, well, I still, fine, but I put in my 4 links, and people still click on, that 4th link.
Yeah.
And my response to that would be, sure, but if you just had the 1 link in there, you'd have, maybe a lot larger percentage of people would actually just be clicking on that initial link rather than splitting their attention among 4 or 5 different things.
That's a good point. And actually, when I have something important like a release or a sale or, something I really want my readers to focus on, I don't have anything else. I only do that one thing, but I probably need to be doing that one thing every time.
Yeah. So I would try to
take some reevaluation.
Yeah. I mean, I would kind of think about it like, well, I have an email to send, or rather, instead of thinking about it like, well, I have to send an email with like, so let me think about all these different things I can send or talk about. I would try to reverse engineer it so that you're like focusing on, well, what's my goal here? And then crafting the email to specifically, try to achieve that specific goal.
Okay. That's a good idea. Yeah. I think I have a tendency to think of a newsletter almost as like a little magazine where you're sharing all these different little columns and things. And that's not really the most efficient use of it. If you really, maybe it might be better to email a little more often, but have each one be more focused instead of once a month with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think it also comes back to the name, like newsletter. You make it makes you feel like it's, all about your news, right? Which, and also, like those pamphlets that they would, provide at libraries and whatnot that would have, to be divided into those, different sections. I think people still, they apply the terminology to the email.
Right. Yeah, and like when I worked I was the activities director at an apartment complex. That was my first job out of college. And, I had to put out a newsletter, and, it was like, Bobby Jean left her garbage can out on the, porch. We need to have that put back, and then you'd have, all the, the activities for the week and all that stuff. And so it was a bunch of sections and stuff. And I think that's what I still think about now. That's very true.
Yeah. That's a good perspective. So on the other hand, do you see any commonalities in writers who've been successful over the long haul? What are people doing right?
I think the main thing is that they don't give up. That's always the sort of thing that comes to mind first, is that they don't give up. Even if you screw up your newsletter, 100 times, maybe you get it right the 101st time, and you build off from there. And so, they keep going, and that applies in a lot of different areas. Like they keep marketing, they keep writing, they keep, within reason. Obviously, you don't want to do things that just aren't working for you, but they don't stop trying to improve themselves. I think, seeking out advice, trying different strategies, not, getting depressed, if something doesn't work, and then just giving up. I think that's a big one.
Yeah. Persistence is huge.
Yeah. I mean, for me too, and anyone else out there who writes slowly, that is the biggest hurdle. Is you wake up some days thinking, this is never going to end. I am never going to finish this book, and everybody else is passing me. But the fact is, we all get to the finish line as long as we don't stop, and I have to remind myself of that all the time. So that's very good advice. So and
I think probably like you just brought up the idea of like not focusing so much on the success of other people. I think that's a hard thing to do.
It is.
Like not paying attention to how other people are doing. But I found personally, like in my own business, that I have to sort of just put on the blinders to some extent and just not pay attention to what other people are doing. Just focus on my goals, my objectives, and just tracking my own progress as to how I'm where I am in achieving my own goals and not caring about anyone else.
Yeah, there's that saying that like they teach runners to just focus on the finish line and not worry about other people in the other lanes because it slows them down as they're glancing around. So if we just totally focus on what we're doing, and even if we get distracted, I've gotten to where sometimes I'll just say, well, that's okay. That's what that person is doing, and I don't have to do that. And it's okay. They can do their thing, and I'll just focus on my thing. That's the best case scenario on the good days.
We won't talk about the days we're in the fetal position. Yeah, rocking back and forth. That's so great. So you work with a wide range of authors and genres. Do you see any trends? What's hot right now? What's not hot? What was hot coming back, being hot?
Yeah. So I think, well, let me put it this way. I guess I think something is so we've seen an interesting trend at Booksweeps, just specifically like relating to over the last few months, specifically like relating to the pandemic situation going on, where probably around March, April, May, let's say, there was a huge surge of on our end interest from in our promotions from readers. So we were seeing maybe 50% to 100% more participation over those first months of the pandemic. And I think I was also hearing from people I work with and people I know that like Facebook ad costs and other ad costs were down as people were worried about effects, residual effects. I think lately, I'm not sure. Maybe it's the summer, but I do notice that it's sort of the numbers have kind of returned back to where they were before the pandemic started. So I'm not sure if either of you have seen anything happening with your own books or with your author friends, but that's something I've been noticing, that maybe it's the summer, maybe it's just the situation has become more normalized.
Yeah, I think it's probably a little both. A friend of mine said today that her sales have been just great. I can't say that. My sales have been steady. I haven't lost money at all, but my sales are steady. I'm making today what I was making before the pandemic, which is great, but I didn't see that big spike like some people did.
Yeah.
But Facebook costs were down. That was nice. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a book release in April, and it seemed to do about like all my other releases, so I don't know that I saw any huge difference either. So, but it's good to know that to me, it sounds like people were interested in finding something to read when they were stuck at home. It sounds like.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of, it's nice to know that people still come back to books when,
Yeah, it really is. And what about trends? Did you see any trend? I mean, like specific genres seeing more traffic than others?
Yeah, I mean, so cozy mystery was doing really well. Sci-fi was doing better than normal. I mean, romance, mysteries, and thrillers, I think, are always really popular.
So I have a question about your categories, and because you have some very, like the way some of the promotions are broken out are very specific. Like there'll be not just mystery, but it'll be like female protagonist mystery or whatever. So how do you do you reevaluate every so often and say, oh, we could use a new category here? Or do you have people request new promotions? How does that work?
Yeah. So we definitely take a lot of requests. And a lot of those categories are based on either historical trends as to what authors seem to be excited about, or based on feedback that we're getting from authors, like, hey, it'd be great, if we could do X, Y, or Z kind of promotion. I also, I'm sure you're familiar with Alex from K-Lytics, so we're fairly close, so he'll give me advice from time to time, or I'll read some of his reports and take a look at what's going on there.
I crashed Jell's dinner in Vegas.
Yeah, that steak was amazing. Remember that?
It was awesome. I'd already eaten one. I just sat and watched you eat yours. Yeah, he's got great information. Just such good information.
So we're fans of Alex's information too at Booksweeps.
Well, that's great that you're responsive, because it seems like there are certain things that, like as a author, I think, I think there's interest here in this little tiny, what to me is a sub niche, but if you can get several other people
Right.
it may not be so small, and it can help, magnify your promotions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
How have you seen indie publishing change, Ryan?
That's a good question. I think my first thought about my first thought there is that I think, over the last, so I've been working with indie authors for about 5 years now. That's crazy. Seems crazy. But I think generally, like, the kind of the baseline knowledge specifically relating to marketing has just like improved so drastically from where things were then to now. Like, people know so much more about email marketing in general. I think there are various reasons for that. Different Facebook groups, podcasts like this one. There's just a lot more information out there, and people are much more kind of aware of what the possibilities are and what the opportunities are.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the first thing that comes to mind. Have you sort of noticed that yourself?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, there's so much good information now, and I feel like there's almost too much information. It's kind of hard to figure out sometimes where the best place is to get information and sort it out. So do you have any trends or anything that you think are kind of on the horizon?
Yeah. I mean, so there's some really, I think some things that are sort of been halted a little bit, but I'm excited to see where they go. So, for example, like voice search, like the ability, for example, to like say like, "Hey Alexa, I want to buy Sara's book. Can I do that?" Like that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really exciting, and there's some interesting potential there.
I was thinking about this the other day, that as audio becomes more popular, one of the big things that we need to think about is how to get people on our newsletter list with an audio book. And because in a print book, you just have that link at the end you can click and you're there. But if you're listening in audio, it's harder to capture that person at that moment. You
need like some sort of QR, like audible QR code. I like, like shout at your shout at your phone. Hey Siri, sign me up for Sarah's newsletter.
Yeah, exactly. That's genius right there.
That can be your next project, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Unless someone else listening to the podcast steals it and takes it first,
I'm sure it would be a lot of work, a lot of involved work that we have no idea about.
Right. So how do you think authors can set themselves up for success the best way? That's one of the questions we ask our authors at the end, kind of at the end, like, what did you do to set yourself up for success? What do you see? What do you think the authors that you see that are successful, what have they done to set themselves up?
I think one big thing is like, it comes back to branding, and part of that is like around, how, thinking about, I mean, I hate to talk about it this way, but like thinking about yourself sort of as a commodity. And, are readers going to, like, if I write in like 8 different genres, are readers going to understand what my brand is and what I do? And like by the same token, am I going to be able to kind of appeal to all of those people with the limited time and resources that I have? And so I think the authors, who seem to me to be the most successful, they kind of at the outset or at some point along their process figure out like, this is what I'm going to focus on, whether that's a genre or a subgenre. And then they just sort of, keep writing within that genre and building branding for themselves specific to that. Because otherwise you're sort of you can be in this uncomfortable position of, trying to like wear, 20 hats at the same time.
Right. And you're always starting over. If you go to a new genre, you're always starting over from scratch almost at times.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be really challenging. Yeah.
And so like all that credit that you build up, within, let's say, romance, if you then try to write sci-fi, like nobody is going to, like you said, you're just starting over.
Yeah. And I think by the same token, and you may have a different thought, but is people who write just a series of like standalones. They're not even standalones in a series. They're just standalone books. I think that's almost as hard as writing in different genres. because it's hard to get momentum when you're just writing one standalone after another.
Exactly. Yeah. It's very similar because people don't, they don't necessarily know, how the books connect, or if, they might not connect at all if they're standalones.
Most of them, some of the people I'm thinking about, they don't connect at all.
Yeah.
Mine are standalones in a series, so they're all set, in this town, or they're all friends, and that's how most romance novels are. It's all, 4 best friends, or 4 brothers, or 3 brothers, or 3 sisters, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, I think our listeners have heard this multiple times from multiple people. Not just skipping around in genres. Pick a genre, brand yourself, and write to that brand and that genre. Super important.
Yeah, and I think even within that, coming up with an identity for your, for your branding that's specific to you as a person, it's really helpful in terms of being, memorable. I think, this goes back to the mistake question, but I think a kind of common mistake is just sort of branding yourself in kind of a templated fashion after other authors within your genre, kind of just copying the specific wording. I don't mean writing to genre or writing to market, but I mean branding kind of in a generic fashion.
Right. Sort of trying to capture the same tone as somebody else because
they're successful. Yeah.
And so to the extent that you can bring your own personal, maybe you're you guys are y'all are from Texas.
That's right.
Y'all are from Texas. So you can bring that into, how you talk about your books. You could even bring certain diction into your emails, for example. So that people then remember oh, those are the Texas girls. Their books are, you know what I mean? So there are all different little ways you can do that. And even when you're just posting on social media, making sure maybe that you're using specific terminology that you want people to remember that's specific to you.
That's true. I have a new assistant. I've just hired an assistant. It's the one Sara uses and we use for the podcast, which is a big deal for me because it's not that I'm control freak. It's mostly that I don't know what the heck I need to do. So it's hard for me to tell somebody else. So she knows what to do, which is good. But she sent out a thing for my ARC and she sent it to me, an email for my ARC, and she sent it to me to, proofread or just look at. And it started with hello peeps. And everything else was great. And I said, listen, I always say y'all. So could you just say hello y'all? And it was perfect. It sounded just exactly my brand, but peeps wouldn't have been my brand. Yeah. Right. So you just have to know that. You have to know what is and isn't your brand.
It's an interesting way to think about branding because normally we think about covers and colors and kind of the feel, but taking it down to even thinking about the words we use when we write posts, that can be part of it too. So that's a really good point.
Yeah. Well, y'all are writers, so
we should be able to do it, right?
Right, you should be. Yeah.
It's not that hard.
Right.
Well, this has been great. You've had such great information to share, and I think that people will be really excited to hear about Booksweeps and Plottr. So, can you tell people where they can find out more about you and Booksweeps and Plottr?
Yeah. So my personal website is just ryanzee.com. And then you can learn more about Booksweeps at booksweeps.com, BOOK sweeps, as in chimney sweeps, .com. And then Plottr is getplottr.com. So that's Plottr without an E. So GETPLOTTR.com.
Okay.
Very good.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It's been great having you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much.
And awesome. we'll have all the links to everything in the show notes, and you can find those at wishidknownforwriters.com. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. We hope this episode inspired you, empowered you, and made you laugh a little bit too. If you loved it, tell your friends about it. And if you feel so inclined, leave us a review. We look forward to being with you again next week.